All right, so I'm going to be doing the Shabutie tier list now. Shabutie has, if you don't know, it was the first name of the band that Claudio Sanchez made before Coheed and Cambria in the, I believe, 1998, 1999 era, and then they started sort of some of the songs from Shabutie became songs that were on the second stage Turbine Blade, including Delirium Trigger, and you can even hear the little giggle Shabutie from Claudio at the start of Devil in Jersey City. And there's a whole lot of sound and style overlap from that first album to the Shabutie bands. So I'm going to create a tier list here, and I'm not going to do all the Shabutie songs. So just to be perfectly clear, there are a number of other Shabutie songs, such as Skittles, Counteract, what's another one, Jut or something, and they all are incredibly poor quality sounds. And in fact, Shabutie itself, the music is pretty low quality, something just a couple tiers lower um, than second stage, in the sense of it almost sounds like garage metal. Like, you can tell they're in a not so professional studio, and it feels almost like they're sort of riffing like live, like bouncing off of each other, just playing, just jamming out sort of thing, and then throwing everything at the wall and then seeing what sticks and what doesn't. So it's a very sort of dynamic and interesting listen, um, which also makes it quite progressive in the um, sort of the way that the songs are laid out, with the chorus versus verses and um, the instrumentals and solos and stuff. It's just kind of all over the place. And so I can see how some definitely that are more into the progressive nature and metal side of Coheed and Cambria would really appreciate this, especially those that were OG or original fans of Coheed and Cambria that know about these songs, and they're the ones shouting when they sing these particular songs live when they come up. Um, so yeah, I just did the all the covers, or at least some of them. It looks like I missed a couple of the covers, but I got the vast majority of them. So now I'm moving on to part two, which is the Shabutie covers, and they have two EPs that were a little bit more professionally delivered, and that would be Plan to Take Over the World and the Penelope EP. I got those 8 here, so not a huge amount of songs, but I still want to rank them and maybe discuss about like how maybe they relate to their newer sound or Coheed and Cambria, and then also kind of what they sound like in general. I think there are definitely some signs of the Amory Wars sort of concept here. I believe Claudio said he came up with that kind of in the mid 90s when he took a trip to Paris, um, and Paris, France, and so you kind of get that name, Paris, Earth, and there's a lot of sort of connection there. Some of this, the lyrics are incredibly edgy and seeming like Al the Killer sort of thing, where it's like, oh, way over the top, very violent, very like sexual, and uh, and kind of again all over the place musically. Um, Something else we have, uh, a song Star Cecil, which is actually could be pulled out right from the Amory Wars comic with second stage, where the Claudio Kilgannon, he goes to this prison planet, and they're taking these alien star people and sucking Wilhelm Ryan is taking their souls and sucking them out, and so there's a connection there as well. So kind of interesting, a few other little connections. But let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go with the Plan to Take Over the World first, because this one came out first, and it's a little, again, it's a little less solid of a set. So let's go with Disciples Anthem. And oh boy, I haven't really thought about the tier list as usual. I'm kind of going in this completely blind. Maybe I'll talk about it. It'll help me out a little bit here. So I think one of my issues with the really old Coheed and Cambria in second stage, as well as Shabutie, is Claudio's vocals, where he's just sort of shouting and yelling, and some of the lyrics are just the same thing over and over again, and he's got this sort of tone in his voice that he or maybe a phraseology or accent in his voice when he says things like or whore or more or for all this like or stuff, and he'll say that again and again, and it sort of draws it out. And it's cool to hear that in some of the later albums, when you're like, oh, there's that or thing he does. And also we hit a couple of the sort of classic ohs that you get from Claudio, the sort of iconic O's that you get. You'll hear them for the first time in some of these songs, which is cool as far as his voice. With Disciples Anthem, I think it's kind of appropriate. I believe this is the first track, and seeing how almost every subsequent album had sort of an anthemic initial song, I think that's kind of appropriate that it's called Disciples Anthem. And this one in particular is totally Shabutie because he's shouting like Shabutie over and over and over again. And that's where the song gets a little like, I don't know, I feel like it has to be maybe even a C, because it's like, it's so cool to hear him shouting Shabutie over and over again, but like he's saying farewell Nikki, farewell Nikki, farewell Nikki, farewell Nikki, farewell Nikki. It's like Queen of the Dark, Queen of the Dark, Queen of the Dark, Queen of the Dark, and yeah, Black Sunday, Black Sunday, Black Sunday, over and over again. So it's funny how in even in Heavenly Creatures he still sort of does this every once in a while. And what's interesting about Farewell Nikki is that Nuo Inkin, or Nikki Owen, is what I believe a former girlfriend that sort of inspired some of the story from the Amory Wars, and he flipped the name backwards. So when he's saying Farewell Nikki in this song, it's actually Nuo's last name, Inkin, backwards. So I just found that particularly neat that you can hear that. But yeah, Claudio, the music is really cool. Again, the guitar metal, and I think generally what you're hearing from Shabutie is it's like a mix of prog metal, post-hardcore, or metalcore, and it's just like it's really, really heavy. It's probably their heaviest stuff. The tempo is really high, and there's a lot of sort of thrashing going on, a lot of really deep growls and screams that I really would prefer that would have happened throughout their discography. Is I feel like the screams have gotten a little like a little forced, or a little less impact, whereas these just seem so completely raw and awesome. So that's definitely it. But the yelling and his voice, man, it sounds like I envision like a really nasally, obnoxious child that you just want to beat. That might be going too far, but his voice is really irritating in some places, particularly in this song and a couple others. And what's funny is it immediately changes even throughout the album or throughout the EP. It gets like better with every song, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, so that's a Disciple Anthem there. Star Cecil. So I think maybe this would be a D. It's maybe the first song that is singing just a little bit too literally and directly about the story, and it comes across. I don't want to. If you look at some of the comments about this song, it sounds a little I don't know how to say, homosexual. I'll get into trouble here. Don't closed caption that so I don't get canceled. But it's kind of interesting because like there's a friendship there between Claudio Kilgannon and Star Cecil, but the way they're singing about it, I even read the comic. I didn't think their connection was as strong as what's suggested here. It sounds like he's singing about a love interest, and I think maybe this is the first catalyst to that sort of rumors coming around. And that I remember people say, "Oh no, he's got like a model, beautiful model girlfriend," and people are like, "Oh really?" And then they see his Claudio's hair and body and physique. You're like, "Oh dude, that's quite the voice coming out of there." But anyway, I don't want to hang up on that too much, and that's not really why I dislike the song. It just the way he's singing it is just again kind of nasally and not as it seems a little cheesy to me, and the music doesn't really get as heavy as some of the others. So it's a softer song, and I do like sort of the change up when he like yells "now maybe" really long and triumphantly, and so I do like that. Strong Short. So this one, I think this is an A. So this one's going in the direction that I really like. If you're talking about where is Coheed and Cambria of maybe the middle era, it's right here in Strung Short. This could definitely be Second Stage Turbine Blade song, or it could be it even has the initial riff sounds like it came right from Fear Through the Eyes of Madness, the star that's kind of bumpy and fun, and it also has the vocals are just a lot better. He's hitting the notes nicely, and it's got some heavy deep reverb, and there's a really cool guitar solo in it. I guess the first time you hear that. And I just saw them play this live. Well, I didn't see them personally, but I watched the video of them playing this live on the SS Neverender, where they went on the cruise. And boy, Claudio hit those notes spot on. It was really cool to hear his voice sound like this. And it just gave me sort of that desire to have him sing a little bit more like that in the modern songs, just to break it up a bit. Every once in a while, toss in those high notes that you get in like Hollywood, the Cracked, and it's a little bit more rare. I guess you get it in the Supremacy, Ladders of Supremacy. He hits that really punchy high note, but it's a little bit fewer and far between where you get those type of notes. So it's really cool to hear them. Good Night. This would be probably my least favorite song of all the Shabuties. And I think it's the music is kind of Star Cecil, kind of just kind of bounces around and doesn't really do anything, not super heavy. It's long. It's got some of, it seems so random. And the story it's like they're playing Star Wars with their siblings and tickling each other about Claudio's childhood. And it seems very like, almost childish, and yet then it's like singing about this sort of heavier stuff later, and it's hard to tell what he was thinking about for the target audience here. But I mean, the chorus is about giving up this the toy, the Millennium Falcon, or a TIE fighter or something like that, and it seems it's just a little strange. But and also the voice is like him again trying to be like a little annoying boy, like singing to his brother and trying to just annoy him. However, I will say this: I believe this is the first song where he does the ohs, and it's kind of cute and nice to hear that for the first time. All right, so now we are getting into Wake Up, which I'm not 100% on the order of this, but because you say Good Night and then Wake Up, and then we have another song called Wake Up that's a ballad that's really soft, and this Wake Up couldn't be more the opposite. It's like this is definitely going to wake you up. In fact, the first couple seconds he's screaming Wake Up, and in a very sort of edgy, hard way. But yeah, I call this as S tier. I love this song actually. There's so much going on, and it's so like again metalcore, this punk sort of progressive. The instruments are awesome. There's so much, and you don't hear it as much in the other song. Maybe a little bit in Disciples Anthem, but you hear so much influence to Shabutie here from Wake Up, in the sense of like that 90s metal music that you would get. It sounds like it starts off sounding really funky, almost like Pearl Jam, and then it goes into that that sort of Jane's Addiction vocals and music. Believe I actually got down here, Up the Beach, from Nothing Shocking with Jane's Addiction. I get that a little bit with the yells of Claudio's voice and a little bit of the sound they were going for, so I could see that influence there. The drums sound like Biohazard, and you got a little bit of this. The bass is super pronounced, so to me it sounds a lot like Primus or Muvane, and it's just so cool to hear that bass just so groovy in there. And there's even, I feel like, a little bit of inspiration from like Helmet, another rock or metal band. But yeah, it's just all over the place, and it's such an interesting song that listening to it now gives me so much nostalgia for those types of bands. And yeah, so anyway, that's Plan to Take Over the World, and then we'll move on to the Penelope EP. So I got Shameless, and this is a good way to start. I think probably a solid track. I think this is a good example of kind of where they go for every song. Very similar. It's very hard to sort of decipher between the songs. And again, it's got that sort of almost that jam where it's like, okay, hey, we're done. Let's throw this together as a song and kind of repeat some moments. And so it seems very raw. And the Penelope EP overall, I really like as just a listen. I think it's just a good set of tracks to listen to. Claudio's voice is less nasally. It seems more natural growls and screams, less forced. He's gotten a little softer in his vocals. But I do have an issue with the generally with all these songs. It's like he's trying out his first sort of overlapping harmonies that you see all across Coheed and Cambria's discography, particularly in Good Apollo Volume 4, where he's doing the doubling up of his vocals, and sometimes he's doing it where he's actually singing another track. Sometimes it's just a pitch adjustment, but here it really sounds like there are like two people singing. I could imagine giving this music to someone and saying, "Hey, listen to this band," and then they'll be like, "Okay, well, it sounds like there's two lead singers, and they're kind of off." And I think that's where it gets really strange, because the vocals tracks, they don't line up very well, so it sounds a little, I don't want to say like pedestrian or something, but it also is kind of, again, it's a little endearing to have it like that raw and that sort of unproduced, if that's a word. But kind of has a cool thing, and there's a lot of that or stuff going on in the vocals here that I think is pretty cool. Yeah, let's see. We get into it. Penelope, man, the lyrics are just super they are super intense, right? And I don't like to use the word inappropriate because I'm fine with it. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I like it. I think in Camouflage, it's starting off almost like this soft, like almost a little bit like a classic Tool sound, and and he's kind of whispering, and then he just starts screaming this really high, shrieking, piercing voice that's and he's talking about power in his genitals and all sorts of completely off the wall things. And it's just this is what I really like. He's like he says it in such sort of a cute, innocent way, but it's such uh, sort of an intense dialogue or lyrics. And I love the way his voice just explodes in this song. It's really really cool. Oh, and meant to say with Shameless, one thing I like about Shameless a lot is there's a little bit of a techno and electronic in this, and there's this band that I used to really like called the Sneaker Pimps, and has sort of has a very high female voice. Is not a guy. It's actually literally is a female, but Shameless sounds like that music quite a bit. So that's I'm happy with that as well. Uh, so back to Camouflage here. I think you got that oh, he says I could not lie to you, oh. It sounds like again you're getting that little hint of modern Coheed and Cambria, which is kind of cool. Actually, I might be getting that confused with the power in my genitals might have been this Kinderhort. Again, some of these kind of overlap a little bit. This is definitely the one with the soaring vocals, but it might have it might be Kinderhort where he does the the genitals one. And the name Kinderhort again, it's the lyrics are just so so kind of crazy, and it definitely reminds me of this again 90s metalcore sort of a little bit of even I want to say like Incubus, and then a little bit of Rage Against the Machine with the sort of repeating screams that you get, and the screams are like fuck and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, so but all of them are very interesting. I think I do like the sort of the vocals better in Camouflage, but I think I might have been a little off with the lyrics there. Godfather's Lollipop. Maybe this is the high A. This was another one that's just super cool. It definitely has that Tool sound, maybe a Curb Dog a little bit. The lyrics are again, he got the couldn't lie to you, and then it's like get down on your knees and suck, oh. And again, Godfather. I don't know what this song's about, but all these sort of are screaming Al the Killer to me, and again the lyrics are just so extreme, but again, I love it. I think it's great, and it's a cool sort of contrast. I think you hear something like Godfather's Lollipop, and then you hear a modern song of like Young Love, and you kind of wonder like where the band has gone. But then we kind of slip back into there with this Cassiopeia song, and I think that's a solid C. This is the last track, at least I think it is, and it's just a calm sort of. It doesn't really go too far, but it gives me a little bit of more like a second stage Turbine Blade, a little bit of maybe Neverender. Kind of feels a little bit like the Elf Tower, and it kind of has sort of a groove to it that's sort of repetitive and soft, kind of like when they did the cover of Under the Milky Way, kind of that sort of tone. And this is just one that doesn't stand out too much for me. So I usually tend to skip it. So when I listen to these songs, I usually do like Disciples Anthem, Strung Short, Wake Up, and then I jump over to Camouflage and Godfather's Lollipop. These are, so yeah, these four are definitely ones that are on repeat for me. But yeah, so that might have been a little all over the place with the discussion here about this. But I think if you haven't heard it, Shabutie, and you're interested in the origins of Coheed and Cambria, I think these are particularly interesting. Interesting listens. You can hear them, and I as much as I feel like it's not quite Coheed and Cambria, I think there's a lot that you can take from it that does sound like it. And I just have this sort of urge. I just wish that there was a little bit more rawness, a little bit more of that edginess and extreme lyrics and heavier growls and stuff from someone that is more into metal. I would love to see this kind of bleed in to some of their current albums. Even though I think his vocals have been refined significantly. Anyway, next one will be the Prizefighter Inferno. album. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I'll see you then.